"Try this rifle, anonymous sniper." The instructor smirked, placing the rifle in the hands of the brown-haired woman standing quietly at the edge of the training range. A recruit whispered, "I heard she used to be a nurse. Probably only knows how to bandage wounds." She didn't respond, just silently adjusted the scope. The shot rang out. The entire range fell dead silent. She had hit a target 1,000 meters away. The bullet piercing dead center. An old veteran whispered, "That shooting style, that's Jack Phantom Whitaker's technique?" Meet Cassandra Cass Whitaker, 32 years old, brown hair, slender build, cold gray eyes. She came to the civilian training camp with one simple goal: to apply for a medical assistant position. This place was mostly men. Many were combat veterans. They had a dismissive view of women, especially quiet women who kept to themselves. Cass never reacted to their jokes and comments. She cleaned rooms, bandaged wounds, maintained practice rifles, and never spoke about her past. Never. The other trainees called her the ghost nurse behind her back. She moved through the facility like a shadow, always present but never noticed, always helping but never asking for recognition. One afternoon during target practice, a new recruit accidentally misfired. The rifle kicked back hard, and the barrel struck his shoulder, creating a deep gash that immediately began bleeding heavily. While everyone else stood frozen in shock, Cass reacted instantly. She was beside him in seconds, her hands moving with surgical precision. She applied pressure to the exact arterial point needed to stop the bleeding. Her technique was flawless, the kind of advanced field medicine that takes years to master. "Someone get the medic," someone shouted. "I am handling it," Cass said quietly, her voice steady as she worked. Within minutes, she had the bleeding controlled and the wound properly dressed. A few people watched, impressed by her skill, but no one asked questions. They assumed she had just taken a lot of first aid courses, nothing more. The head instructor, a gruff ex-Marine named Sergeant Rodriguez, gave her a new nickname that day, Nurse Know-It-All. He used it constantly, usually in front of everyone, always with that same condescending smile. "Hey, Nurse Know-It-All, we need you to clean the rifles again." "Nurse Know-It-All? Think you can handle restocking the medical supplies?" Cass never responded to the mockery. She simply nodded and did whatever was asked of her. But those who looked closely might have noticed something in her eyes. Not hurt or anger, but patience. The kind of patience that comes from carrying a much heavier burden than anyone realizes. Late at night, when the facility was quiet, Cass would sit alone in the medical bay, carefully cleaning and maintaining equipment with the same methodical precision she applied to everything else. Her movements were economical, practiced, almost mechanical in their efficiency. She wore an old military watch that she never took off. Sometimes when she thought no one was looking, she would touch it gently, as if drawing strength from some distant memory. Have you ever been underestimated despite giving your all for others? Drop a dot in the comments. You're not alone. Late one evening, Cass stood alone in her small quarters, staring at an old photograph in a worn wooden frame. The picture showed an older man in military dress uniform, his eyes sharp and focused. Her father, Jack Phantom Whitaker, legendary sniper from the Gulf War. The photo captured him during his prime, when his name was whispered with reverence in military circles around the world. Jack Whitaker could make impossible shots in impossible conditions. Wind, rain, darkness, nothing stopped him. But more importantly, he never missed when it mattered most. Every morning of her childhood, they had trained together before dawn. While other kids were sleeping, Cass was learning to read wind patterns, calculate bullet drop, and understand how light and shadow could make the difference between life and death. "It's not about the shot, Cassie," her father would say, his voice patient but firm. "It's about everything before the shot, the breath, the heartbeat, the moment of perfect stillness." He taught her everything: trajectory calculations, environmental factors, equipment maintenance, and most importantly, the mindset of a true marksman. But he always emphasized one crucial point. "This skill isn't for killing, sweetheart. It's for preventing someone else from being killed." After her father's death 3 years ago, Cass had left the military for reasons she never discussed with anyone. She carried his old watch and his lessons, but she had sworn never to pick up a rifle again. until today. The next morning, the training facility announced a mandatory marksmanship test. Everyone had to participate, even support staff. It was meant to be a fun competition, a way to boost morale and give the trainees something to bond over. Sergeant Rodriguez walked over to Cass with a military-grade M24 sniper rifle. His smile was particularly wide that morning. "Come on, Nurse Know-It-All," he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Let's see what you can do with a real weapon." The gathered crowd chuckled. Some made bets on whether she would even hit the target board, let alone the bullseye. Cass looked at the rifle for a long moment. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "When the moment comes, you'll know what to do." She stepped up to the firing line without a word. The target was set at 300 meters, a respectable distance for most shooters, but nothing compared to what she had trained for. As she lifted the rifle, something changed in her posture. The uncertain medical assistant disappeared, replaced by someone else entirely, someone who had been hiding in plain sight. She adjusted the rifle with movements so fluid and precise that even the veteran instructor stopped talking. Her breathing slowed. Her stance shifted into perfect form. She aligned the scope with the kind of muscle memory that can only come from thousands of hours of practice. The range fell silent. Even the jokers in the back stopped laughing. Cass took one deep breath, held it, and squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked across the range like thunder. When the spotting scope focused on the target, a collective gasp went up from the crowd. Perfect center shot, not just hitting the bullseye, drilling through the exact mathematical center with surgical precision. An old instructor named Williams, who had served alongside her father 20 years ago, stepped forward. His face had gone pale. "That shooting stance," he whispered, loud enough for others to hear. "That's Jack Whitaker's signature technique. If you've ever learned something precious from someone who came before you and kept it in silence, share it. Legacy isn't about showing off, it's about protection." 3 days later, the base received an urgent alert. Intelligence reports indicated a hostile sniper team was moving toward the training facility, part of an advanced tactical simulation designed to test the base's defensive capabilities. The exercise was meant to be realistic, real enough to be dangerous if anyone made a mistake. All personnel were immediately evacuated to underground bunkers. But during the hasty evacuation, a group of new recruits got separated from their unit. They were trapped in the eastern building, cut off from the main evacuation route. The simulation sniper team was approaching that exact building. If the recruits were discovered during the exercise, they could be seriously injured. Or worse, the simulation used paint rounds, but at close range they could cause real damage. Standard protocol was to wait for the tactical response team to extract the trapped recruits, but that would take at least 20 minutes. The simulation snipers would reach their position in 10. Cass knew the facility's layout better than anyone after months of cleaning and maintaining every corner of the complex. She also knew something else. She was the only person in the bunker who could make the shot needed to neutralize the threat before it reached the recruits. Without asking permission, without announcing her intentions, Cass quietly slipped away from the evacuation group. She made her way to the armory where the M24 rifle from the test still sat in its case. She climbed to the second floor of the abandoned administration building, the highest vantage point with a clear line of sight to the eastern approach. From there, she could see the entire tactical field. The wind was gusting at 15 miles per hour from the northwest. The distance to the target zone was approximately 800 meters. The simulation snipers would be wearing protective gear, so she needed to hit the center mass target sensors to register a kill and end their participation in the exercise. Cass set up her position with the same methodical precision her father had drilled into her. She calculated wind drift, adjusted for the slight upward angle, and settled into the perfect shooting stance. Through her scope, she could see the simulation team moving toward the building where the recruits were hiding. 3 figures in full tactical gear, approaching with professional efficiency. She had one shot. Miss, and the recruits would be discovered. The exercise would continue, and someone could get seriously hurt. Her father's voice whispered in her memory, "When lives are on the line, there is no second place. There is only the shot that matters." Cass controlled her breathing, feeling her heartbeat slow to the rhythm she had learned so many years ago. The crosshairs settled on the lead sniper's center target sensor. She exhaled half her breath and held it. The rifle fired. 800 meters away, the lead simulation sniper's equipment immediately signaled a direct hit. Exercise terminated. All clear signal activated. The communication system crackled to life. Simulation concluded. Threat neutralized. All personnel safe. Before anyone could react, before questions could be asked, a senior officer entered the administration building. Lieutenant Colonel Ellis, a man who had served alongside Jack Whitaker for 3 tours of duty. He found Cass still at her shooting position, calmly securing the rifle. Colonel Ellis looked at her for a long moment, then slowly raised his hand in a crisp military salute. "I knew this day would come," he said quietly. "Your father told me about you. He said someday, when the moment was right, you would step forward." He paused, his voice filled with both respect and sadness. "He also told me you would do it not for glory, but because someone needed to be protected, just like he taught you." By the time other personnel reached the building, word had already spread throughout the base. The quiet medical assistant who cleaned their rifles and bandaged their wounds was the daughter of the most legendary sniper in modern military history. But more than that, she had just proved she was worthy of that legacy. Have you ever been misunderstood for a long time, until someone finally stood up and vouched for you? Name that person in the comments, the one who believed in you before the world did. After the simulation incident, Cass was offered an immediate return to active military duty. Multiple special operations units wanted to recruit her. The offers came with significant rank increases, specialized assignments, and the kind of recognition most soldiers dream of. She declined them all. "I'm not here to be a weapon," she told Colonel Ellis during their private meeting. "I'm here to help people heal and learn. That's what my father would have wanted." But something had changed after that day. The mockery stopped completely. The dismissive attitudes disappeared overnight. Instead, recruits began approaching her with genuine questions. "Cass, could you show me how to properly adjust a scope? Would you mind helping me with my breathing technique? I'm having trouble with my shooting stance. Could you take a look?" She never held formal classes. She never stood at the front of a room giving lectures. But somehow, she was always surrounded by people who wanted to learn. They would sit with her during breaks, walk with her during equipment maintenance, and listen carefully to her quiet explanations. Her teaching style was the same as her personality. Understated but incredibly effective. She would make tiny adjustments to someone's grip, offer subtle suggestions about breathing rhythm, or share small insights about reading environmental conditions. "Your father was like that too," Colonel Ellis told her one afternoon. "He never needed to be the loudest voice in the room. People listened because they knew he had something worth hearing." The recruits started calling her Coach Cass, not as a joke, but as a term of genuine respect and affection. 2 weeks later, Colonel Ellis approached her with a sealed envelope. "Your father left this for you," he said simply. "He asked me to give it to you only after you had proven something to yourself." Inside was a letter in her father's familiar handwriting. "Cassie, if you're reading this, it means you've used your skills when they truly mattered. It means you've understood that our training was never about being the best shooter. It was about being the right person in the right moment. You've kept your promise to me, sweetheart, but more importantly, you've kept your promise to yourself. I'm proud of you. Dad." That evening, Cass sat in the quiet medical bay, her father's letter in one hand and his old watch in the other. For the first time since his death, she smiled. Has someone taught you something precious that you only understood much later? Thank them with one simple line, "I understand now." Not everyone who carries a powerful past needs to be celebrated. Some people walk quietly through our lives, leaving behind skills and wisdom for us to use exactly when we need them most. Cass didn't step forward to become a hero. She simply kept a promise. And with one perfect shot, she silenced an entire training ground. Sometimes what the world needs to change isn't someone demanding recognition. It's someone who doesn't need to be recognized at all. If you've ever seen someone's true value only when they acted in silence, share this story, because the world needs more people like that.